This is the Shoalhaven, the heart of the south coast of New South Wales. A rich, fertile area bordered in the east by the South Pacific Ocean and in the west by the Great Dividing Range. Rising out of the coastal plain is the mountain called Coolangatta, Aboriginal for a fine view, the centre of what was once called berry country. Its identity as a prime dairying area is involved in history. Its discovery as a holiday playground is of more recent origin. The potential of the 1,800 square miles area with its 70 miles of coast has yet to be fully realised. The miles of clean, open surfing beaches, unspoiled by environmental pollution, are just part of a variety of holiday attractions awaiting to refresh and invigorate the visitor. Holiday seeker, along with the visitor passing through, are in fact following events made popular in the earlier history of the Shoalhaven. The days when travellers rode on or behind horses, covering the long journey from Sydney town to the settlement of Coolangatta, founded in 1822 by Alexander Berry.
At the foot of a hill I will build Coolangatta, and by the Shoalhaven she'll stand. Everyone will know the name Coolangatta, the finest estate in the land.
Coolangatta is the name Alexander Berry and Edward Wollstonecraft gave to their permanent camp, nestling at the foot of the mountain near the mouth of the Shoalhaven River. This was after they decided to settle the 10,000 acres granted to them by Governor Brisbane in return for maintaining 100 convicts from the penal colony of New South Wales. The fortunes of the settlement developed slowly from the gathering of seed, the building of shipping to carry farm products to Sydney, to a dairy industry second to none in the country, beginning with the introduction of 600 head of cattle in 1824. Born into a farming family in Fifeshire, Scotland, Alexander Berry, educated with a university degree, first entered the service of the East India Company as a ship surgeon. But before coming to Australia, he had left the company's service and became a successful merchant trader. It was in this capacity that he met his eventual partner, Edward Wollstonecraft. In acquiring his partner's share of the Shoalhaven land, he began a dream, as legend tells it, originating from the time he climbed to the top of the mountain called Coolangatta, and observing the fine view on all sides, decided that one day he would own all the land he could see.
10,000 acres of land I will need, and 100 convicts to clothe and to feed. There'll be no time to waste, sir, there's work to be done. From the first morning light till the setting of the sun.
In attempting to land across the shoals that threatened access to the Shoalhaven River, Alexander Berry lost 2 men in rough water. Further south was the entrance to another river, separated from the greater Shoalhaven by a narrow isthmus. Here he gave orders for the first canal in Australia to be built, joining the 2 rivers, a distance of 209 yards. Today, the historic canal, completed by 3 men in 12 days, has disappeared after repeated floodings of the Shoalhaven widened and ultimately washed away its original narrow course, replacing it with a wide sweep of the river. In the early days of the settlement, Alexander Berry invited his brothers John and David, with their sisters, to join him and help run the... When he died at Crow's Nest in Sydney, the stewardship was first left to John, then to David, and later to a cousin, Dr. John Hay, who finally fulfilled the Berry legacy. This amounted in part to over 75,000 acres of land, with 125 miles of canals draining swampy areas and attempting flood control. Welcome home soldiers who served their country in the Great Wars. With the establishment of Nowra, and named after David Berry, as prime towns in the Shoalhaven, together with the ultimate encroachment of decay and overgrowth, the fire in 1946 that destroyed the Berry Hay homestead seemed to mark the end of history at Coolangatta. What had been the pride of the South Coast was now virtually a ghost town. This was the scene that greeted Mr. Carl Bishop when he sought to acquire land for dairy farming from the remaining acres left in the Berry estate. The history of the settlement, the story of the Berry brothers, Alexander, John and David, and the rural empire they had established at Coolangatta, had long interested both Mr. Bishop and his wife Norma. Their mutual interest led them to the start of a new life amid the memories and creaking timbers of the weather-worn village.
I recall back in 1947 when I acquired the first block of Coolangatta, and the subsequent purchases over the next number of years until the mid-60s, when after about 7 such purchases we began this gigantic task of cleaning up the mess. And then following a further period of time up to 69, and a realisation that although we'd spent a terrific amount of money and a tremendous amount of effort had gone to the task that we'd set ourselves, the restoration of this very wonderful place, just wouldn't ever have been complete had we gone on along these lines. So it became quite evident to us that something had to be done. For this reason, we gave the authorities the opportunity of looking at the possibility of taking over the establishment for the formation of an historic village. But after 2 years of survey, the authorities decided that they felt that they could not achieve this for many, many years due to lack of sufficient funds. So it became evident to us that if ever we were to see this project through, that something of a commercial nature had to be embarked upon, because through our rural pursuits, which is what the property was originally purchased for, this of course would never have been possible, this sizable expenditure.
Under the guidance of architect Mr. John Fisher, Mr. Stuart Priddle and his craftsmen, all local tradesmen, spent the next 18 months blending their efforts to create and recreate something new from an almost 150 years old legacy. Timber surfaces and bricks quarried by convict labour on the property were given protective coats of a clear solution in order to retain their original image and texture. Such things as nails, bolts, possibly manufactured in Europe and transported from Sydney town, were left uncovered as they were. To recreate this 19th century colonial splendour and atmosphere, all the services, the existing wires, telephone and electrical, had to be removed from poles and placed underground with water storage, intercom vision systems. All cables, anything not 19th century, had to be removed. The hall was to be left virtually intact, except for extensions to house a kitchen and the necessary facilities required for an up-to-date restaurant. Where in the past the social and entertainment life of the Shoalhaven had been centred and staged, furniture bought and brought from all over the state was stored temporarily alongside floor coverings, light fittings, mirrors. All the appliances needed to convert the village building's interiors into 20th century modern units with 19th century exteriors. As a preliminary to its renewed life as a centre of social activity, the restaurant was opened to celebrate a wedding. fitting rebirth to the old hall, decorated and filled with happy guests, friends keen to wish success and a happy life to bride and groom, as well as providing a test for what the future held in the new life ahead for the historic village rest. But this was only the beginning. Ahead lay many more days of reconstruction and planning. Long, anxious hours of waiting to see if what had been achieved would be accepted by the many friends of historical Coolangatta. From the top of his mountain, as in time long ago, the spirit of Alexander Berry could well be pleased at the continuation of life in the village below. Whatever the means, his dream, his village, his Coolangatta has been saved for the future from the decay of the past. From where once he had viewed the surrounding countryside and claimed it all for his own, today's youth walk a scenic trail to a new glory. The plaintive call of the bagpipes, the swirl of tartan from the kilts of the Bathurst Scots College Pipe Band heralded the 150th anniversary of Coolangatta's foundation. Visitors from all over the state, and in particular the Shoalhaven, came to celebrate the establishment of the first settlement on the south coast by reenacting the landing of Alexander Berry, his convicts, and the soldiers to guard them. Friends, neighbours, members of council, politicians, all joined in to celebrate and to hear messages of goodwill and congratulations from as far afield as Fifeshire in Scotland, Alexander Berry's birthplace. As the highlight of the celebrations, the State Minister for Lands and Tourism was invited to make official the opening of the recreated historic village and motel by unveiling the Coolangatta Foundation Stone.
Drag our boats over, and soon we will land, and the people who follow when we've paved the way. In the years yet to come, we'll remember that day. At the foot of a hill I will build Coolangatta, and by the Shoalhaven she'll stand. Everyone will know the name Coolangatta, the finest estate in the land. Everyone will know the name Coolangatta, the finest estate in the land.
We feel that we've struck upon something that might appeal to the imagination of the public generally, in that this historic village that we are establishing, the historic village motel as such, has something to offer that's quite unique in Australia, and in fact possibly anywhere in the world. In that it's the only place that we're aware of where in fact a motel has been established, where people can come and in fact live with history rather than visit an historical place and move on.
And the people who follow when we've paved the way, in the years yet to come we'll remember that day. At the foot of a hill I will build Coolangatta, and by the Shoalhaven she'll stand. Everyone will know the name Coolangatta, the estate in the land. Coolangatta, the finest estate in the land.